Hi guys, I'm Deblina. I'm doing my Masters in Forensic Science from National Forensic Sciences University. And today I'm going to talk on a basic introduction of forensic anthropology. So, anthropology is the study of humans, including their cultures and their biology. The culture and biology together is termed as physical anthropology, although the term bioanthropology is more accurate. Forensic anthropology is a specialty within physical anthropology which involves the application of osteology and skeletal identification. Now, forensic anthropologists work with skeletal remains and try to determine and identify the deceased. They often work with forensic pathologists and forensic odontologists to help determine the cause and manner of death and the post-mortem interval, that is the time since death. Now, the underlying principle of skeletal identification is that every human being's skeleton is unique in some ways. Most bones have unique characteristics that arise from genetics, growth, and injury. A forensic anthropologist identifies these characteristics in skeletal remains and compares them to antemortem evidence. If enough of these unique characteristics exist in both an unknown skeleton and a suspected person, then an identification can be made and possibly the cause and manner of death can be determined. Now, in mass disasters such as the destruction of the World Trade Center or plane crashes, forensic anthropologists are routinely called in to help recover the bodies. Some forensic anthropologists are expert in constructing facial features over the skull in hope that someone will be able to identify the person. Now, as forensic anthropologists deal with the remnants of human bones from crime scenes, we should take a look at the human skeleton and its characteristics. Now, before describing how the skeleton is used in this work, it is important to understand some features of the skeleton system. The basic unit of human skeleton is bone, as we all know, and there are 206 bones in the normal human skeleton. Now, bones are living, functioning entities, and the skeleton is considered to be an organ system. Now, bones grow and change over time, and they can alter and repair themselves as needed. Now, bones have a number of functions in the body. First, they provide support for the organs and tissues. Muscles attach at bones and their contractions make motion possible. Bones also serve as a protective function for some of the more soft and delicate tissues. For example, rib cage protects the heart and lungs. Also, the skull protects our brain from shock. Also, bones are the body's center for growth. So, when some bones are encountered at a scene and it has been determined that the bone is of human origin and is fairly recent, the process of identification begins. First, class characteristics will be determined as a part of biological profile, which will enable the anthropologist to put the skeletal remains in a subgroups. Other factors such as the stature, socio-economic status, and time since death may also be determined. Then, if possible, individual characteristics will be determined that could lead to absolute identification. Now I'm going to discuss some of the common class characteristics that can be determined as a part of biological profile. First comes the age determination from bones, then the sex determination, then the race determination, and finally the stature determination from the bones. First is age determination. Although bones change throughout our lives in response to activity, aging, disease, and injury, there are definite intervals during which bones are actively growing. Once they have reached maturity, the bones will not grow anymore except for repairs and reactions to aging. Thus, the mechanisms by which the age at death is estimated are different for different people in different ages. Now, one of the most reliable ways of determining the age is by assessing the formation of teeth and their eruption. Temporary teeth are formed before the eruption of permanent teeth, and they erupt in a fairly predictable time period. There are many available charts that list the timetable for the formation of temporary and permanent teeth for various populations. Age can also be determined by the macroscopic observation of the condition of the pubic symphysis. The left and the right bones, the hip bones or pelvic bones, join at pelvis. Where these join, there is a symphysis or a space that has a small amount of cartilage. So when this cartilage is removed and the bones are separated, the shape and texture can be examined. So these changes in a predictable way as a person ages. So in general, the older a person gets, the smoother the surface becomes. In addition to the pubic symphysis, age can also be determined from analyzing the ends of the ribs that meet in the front of the body, that is, the sternal ends. It also changes as a person gets older, like the shape of the surface and the amount of pitting, the type and quality of the bone, and the presence of projections from the bones. Now comes the sex determination. In general, human males are larger than human females, but this is more obvious in life than when only the skeleton remains are encountered. So in some cases, there is a little difference in size between male and female skeletons, and the examination to determine the gender must focus on certain regions of the skeleton. These differences are not clear until after puberty, and it may be risky to try to determine the sex of a skeleton that is younger than about 18 years. Most commonly, the skull and the pelvis are the areas that are most diagnostic of gender. The pelvis is the most obvious place to discover sex-related differences as it exhibits about 97% of the differences. This is largely due to having different functions in males and females. In females, the pelvic region must support a fetus during the development and its delivery. This is why female pelvis is broader. The most obvious location on the pelvis where gender difference can be seen is the sciatic notch. In the absence of pubic bones, there are features of skull that are good indicators of sex. A number of skull bones differ in males and females. For example, our brow ridges, mastoid processes, mandible, etc. Now comes the determination of race. The determination of a person's race or ancestry can be difficult. The skeleton does not contain many obvious characteristics that define racial characteristics. So there are a number of ways of defining ancestry though. The most reliable means of determining race is the skeleton, are centered on the skull and can be based either on gross morphological examination or mathematical analysis of various morphological features. There are a number of skull characteristics that are racially distinct. For example, our eye orbits vary from round to triangular to rectangular. Other variations can occur in our nasal apertures, the palate, and the mouth region. The femur of our leg also exhibits racial characteristics, specifically the curvature, which varies from straight in black people to more curved in Native Americans or in between in Caucasians. Now comes stature determination. Attempts at stature determination have been made since the beginning of the 20th century. Today, the most practical method of determining stature uses measurements of long bones. Sometimes a large fragment of a long bones may be used. The long bones are humerus, radius and ulna of the arm, and femur, tibia and fibula of our leg. A linear relationship exists between the lengths of these bones and the overall stature of the individual. So when estimating stature, the more precise the long bone measurements are, the better. Now comes the individualization of human bones. The elements of the biological profile described a while ago are class characteristics. It would obviously be useful to be able to individualize bones or a skull to a particular individual. In case of bones, this can only be done by comparing unique features of the bones with one from a known source. Typically, this would involve comparing post-mortem and ante-mortem X-rays of the bones. So, if a bone is broken, then it will show sign of break as it heals, and these signs will usually remain throughout the life and will show up in X-rays and will help in individualization. Even if a bone is not injured during life, there are many instances where a bone exhibits enough variation among individuals that X-rays of these bones can be used for identification. There are several bones in the skull, including the frontal sinuses and places where arteries and veins enter and leave the skull. They can also be individualized. Now, if all or most of the skull is recovered from a crime scene, we need to analyze the skull. So, the most reliable method of skull analysis is photo superimposition. So, this involves the comparison of the skull with a photograph of the suspected owner. So, one of the newer methods of accomplishing the comparison is to use video camera to photograph the skull and then superimpose them. Computer can also be used to superimpose images and analyze them to determine if they came from the same individual. The other methods of analysis is used when the skull is recovered and there are no clues of its origin. So a three-dimensional reconstruction of the soft tissues of a face are built up onto the skull, and a proper reconstruction requires the race and sex of the skull. So using measurement tables, the anthropologist uses pegs and clay to build up the face along with prosthetic eyes and wigs. This is not a wig. Okay, so then comes a collection of bones. So forensic anthropologists are also the principal investigators that collect the remains once they are discovered. The proper collection of skeletal remains is crucial to a successful identification and must always be done under the watchful eye of an experienced forensic anthropologist. The search and collection of skeletal remains in outdoor scenes must be done by professional anthropologists who are trained in recognition and collection of such material both above the ground and buried. So that's it. I've tried to cover the basics of anthropology in this brief video. Hope you guys find this helpful. Stay safe. Thank you.